Hi, I first want to say I'm sorry about the whole microphone not working. I actually had to reset my computer and then that didn't work, and I had to Google how to get my microphone to work because apparently somehow it got turned off and it was a whole process, but I think I finally figured it out. So this is my presentation on caregiving and PLS. So what is PLS? PLS is short for primary lateral sclerosis. It is a type of motor neuron disease that causes the nerve cells in the brain that control movement to fail over time. It is a very similar disease to ALS, often mistaken for ALS, but people with PLS live a longer lifetime, almost even a normal lifetime. One of the things ALS does is disrupts your face movements and your face muscles, eye muscles, and speech and swallowing. That's very common in ALS, whereas PLS, that's not usually something that happens. So symptoms of PLS, and these symptoms are overall and specific to my Aunt Sharon, who I will be discussing. So symptoms generally begin in the legs. For my Aunt Sharon, they begin in her hands. Other symptoms include stiffness, weakness, muscle spasm, slowed movement, clumsiness, slow slurred speech, difficulties chewing and swallowing, mood swings, bladder and breathing problems. My Aunt Sharon goes through all those symptoms. Obviously, they didn't all start with that. She didn't start with all those symptoms, but she has progressively gotten every single one of them. Her symptoms started in her hands. She had slowed movements in her hands, and they would shake, and she would go through times where she'd lose control over them. The one example that I got was playing cards. She would shake, she wouldn't be able to grab cards, her hands would freeze up, and she just really struggled, and that was about the first sign we could all think of when we think of her having PLS. So caregiving. My Uncle Rick is 82. This is a picture of my Uncle Rick and Aunt Sharon. He has been taking care of my Aunt Sharon, which is his wife, for about 15 years. Her PLS has progressively gotten worse. She is 75 years old, and my Uncle Rick chose to take care of her himself because he felt that as her husband, it was his duty, and that's what he was called to do. Just some things about them. So the picture on the left shows some of the things that my Aunt Sharon eats on a daily basis. She is not able to swallow a lot. She is slowly losing her ability to swallow. Right now, she has a peg in her stomach because she was not getting proper nutrition and she was losing so much weight because she couldn't swallow. So she got a peg put into her stomach where you basically tube feed right into her stomach. And my Uncle Rick does that himself. So these are some of the things that she can swallow and can be put into that peg because it's all liquids. And then this on the right picture is what my uncle calls Sharon's Corner, and it is where she spends most of her time during the day. She goes from her chair to the bed just to be in different positions, whether it's sitting up or laying down, and she sits there and she will sit on her iPad or watch TV, as she does have a little control in her hand still, so she is able to press buttons, so she spends most of her day there. Everyday life. I just want to point out, in the beginning I showed a picture of my Aunt Sharon before PLS really took a big hit on her, and this is her now. Everyday life for my Uncle Rick and Aunt Sharon includes a rotation from the bed to her chair, and that's about a 3-hour rotation, my Uncle Rick said. When she is being moved, my Uncle Rick has to change her, as she has no control over her bowel movements, so she is not in control when she has to use the restroom, so she wears a diaper. He also bathes her about every 4 days, and she does have, like I said, she does have little control in her hands, so as in this picture, she is using the remote and she is watching TV. The one other thing my Uncle Rick had to do is when they would go out places before it got really bad and she couldn't really walk, or she could still walk a little bit, he would put makeup on her, he would cut her hair, do her hair, he clothes her still, he has to bathe her. I mean, he does everything for her. She is not able to do any of it. He brushes her teeth every morning and night, and I think that's amazing because that takes someone special. To me, in my eyes, that takes someone special to be able to do all that. So how my Uncle Rick takes time for himself. Caregiving is not usually something that someone sees coming, and sometimes people have no training in it. Caregiving can take a toll on one's mental health, especially if it's someone you love that you have to take care of. So I asked my Uncle Rick how he unwinds, and he told me he recently got into painting and drawing on his iPad. He has an app for it, and so he shared these 2 pictures with me. He is also a very religious person, and I know that he finds a lot of time and comfort in praying and reading the Bible. He knows that this PLS is terminal. She will die with it. He is just trying his best to be as positive as can be. Through talking to my Uncle Rick, I can see how much he loves taking care of his wife, and he appreciates the time that he gets to spend with her. One thing that stood out to me is how he basically had to learn medicine for himself. Because he is the one taking care of her, he does have to give her all of her medicine. He has to feed her through her peg. He has to flush the peg so none of that stuff gets infected. He has almost become her at-home doctor, and I think that takes a lot to learn stuff like that. One of the things he actually had to do was cut up these CBD gummies. So when my Aunt Sharon could swallow, she would take CBD gummies to help her sleep and help with her anxiety. They were too big for her, so my Uncle Rick would cut them in about 3 pieces, and then he would rinse them off, but because they were so sticky, he couldn't touch them, so he had to poke them with a needle, and then he would cover them back with powdered sugar and then put them back into the bottle and then give them to her so that she could take them and they would help, and he went through all that process just so she could take a CBD gummy. Overall, I learned about what goes into caregiving, and I was able to see that no matter what, my Uncle Rick would just take care of his wife and be there for her because he felt it was his job as a husband. And just by talking to him, I was able to see how much love he has for her and even caregiving and how that all has a special place in his heart. Caregiving is not an easy job, and it takes someone special to do it as a full-time job. So this was my presentation on PLS and caregiving. I hope that you enjoyed and you learned a lot. Thank you.